Hey, this is Victoria Aguilar, and this is my ADR M&C project. We are going to be talking about how the four companies' stock price changed from January to April, and we're going to be looking at why they changed and their correlations to their home country and the company that they are most correlated with. So for my ADRs, I have BlackBerry and Nintendo, and their BlackBerry is based in Canada. Their top suppliers are US, South Korea, and Taiwan. Their customers are Mexico, US, and Canada. Nintendo is based in Japan. Their top suppliers are Japan, Taiwan, and the US. Their top customers are US, Japan, and Great Britain. My MNCs are Apollo Global Management and Mondelez. Apollo Global Management is top suppliers is US and Great Britain. Their top customers is US, Europe, and Japan. Mondelez International, their top suppliers are US, Japan, and Great Britain, and their top customers are US, Switzerland, and Australia. Now we're going to look at each month and see how they change stock price between each month, and we're going to look at why. So for the month of January, the average portfolio was negative 1.8%. Apollo Global Management change was 5.52%. The primary reason was because they announced their full 2014 financial results, and Credit Suisse downgraded their shares. So even though they downgraded their shares, the financial results made an overall positive return for that month. Mondelez was negative 3.94%. Their main announcement this month was they announced Red Velvet Oreos, but Citigroup downgraded them from neutral to buy. So that outweighed the announcement of Oreos, and it caused a negative return for that month. BlackBerry was 1.33%. Big news this month, Samsung offered to buy BlackBerry, which made their stock rise by 30%, but then declined their offer and the prices fell back down. Nintendo, negative 7.22%. Nintendo benefits from the weaker yen, but it still struggles to compete in a rising market. Nintendo's share price rose after the announcement of their collaboration with Gung Ho, but it's still negative. For the month of February, the average portfolio return was 3.75%. Apollo Global Management was negative 6.23%. Their primary reason was because they announced a lower than expected earnings per share, and the CEO sells a good chunk of their stock. So those are both bad things. Mondelez, 4.53%. Credit Suisse picked Mondelez as one of their top picks for major growing stocks in the customer sector. They declared a regular 15-cent dividend for Class A stocks, and they reported their full 2014 financial results, which included a strong earnings per share and a positive outlook for 2015. So all of these are great things for Mondelez, and it caused their stock price to increase for February. BlackBerry, 4.88%. Billionaire Jim Simmons bought 3.3 million shares. They made a deal with Google to ensure Android devices. They released the OS 10.3.1. Options were purchased with the right to buy 200,000 shares of BlackBerry stock at a strike price of $10 per share. So I believe that the options purchase were the main reason that their stock price increased. If you're buying options, that means you think the stock price is going to go up, so they had a positive return. Nintendo, big jump from last month at 11.81%. This is because they launched the 3DS and it sold out in days. Also, Netflix and Nintendo are developing a live-action Legend of Zelda. So Nintendo is actually starting to produce some games, and it's paying off in their stock price. For the month of March, the average portfolio return was 3%. Apollo Global Management, negative 7.38%. There were talks to acquire most of the assets of Digital First Media. They secured an additional $4 billion from the Teachers Retirement System of Texas, and Morningstar rated them a triple B, gave them 5 stars, and they bought some casino games for $476 million. Mondelez, negative 2.3%. A company invests $11 million to install the largest Oreo production line in Africa, which I find interesting because Africa is not one of their top suppliers or customers, so they might be looking to go elsewhere. BlackBerry, negative 16.62%. They had sales on Passport phone was extremely low. Stocks fell after being downgraded by Goldman Sachs. So both those things are bad, which caused them to downgrade. Nintendo, real high at 38.3%. Nintendo announced it will be developing games for smartphones based on their original characters, and Goldman Sachs expected their ROE to rise. Very good for Nintendo. For the month of April, the average portfolio return is 7.13%. Apollo Global Management, 0.69%. It sold part of its stake in Dish TV. It has a rating of hold from 14 different ratings firms. So kind of average right there. Mondelez, 2.05%. They're actually being sued by CFTC for manipulating wheat prices. They were downgraded from hold to buy. So even though they're being sued, their stock price stays up. So they must be doing something else good that didn't show up on the articles that I read. BlackBerry, 7.44%. They're now offering Leap, which is now available for sale in the US, France, and Germany. Investors acquired 24,357 put options. So again, if you're buying put options, you're thinking the stock price is going to increase, and that's the main reason why BlackBerry has a positive return for this month. Nintendo, another good one at 18.33%. They announced their first game on the smartphone. So I'm seeing a trend, definitely with Nintendo, that they're doing new products, and as soon as they announce a new product, their stock price shoots up. Now we're going to be talking about graphs and how the companies relate to their countries that they're most highly correlated with. So right here we have MNC Mondelez, and this graph shows the S&P 500 and Apollo Global Management all together. So my two MNCs related with the S&P. It looks like Mondelez and the S&P are more highly correlated than Apollo, which is going all over the place on its own. This graph compares Apollo to the S&P and their most highly correlated, which is Europe. And it looks like the two indexes follow each other, and Apollo, again, is off on its own. This graph is comparing Mondelez with the S&P and their most highly correlated, which is Switzerland. And it looks like the S&P and Mondelez follow each other more, and Switzerland is going crazy there on its own. This graph compares BlackBerry to its home country, which is Canada, and their top suppliers, which is the US and Mexico. And it looks like the S&P, all three indexes follow each other, and BlackBerry is going off on its own. This graph does the same thing. It compares ADR Nintendo to its home base Japan and US and Taiwan, which are its top correlations. And again, it does the same thing. It looks like the top three indexes follow each other, and Nintendo's doing its own thing over here. So my two ADRs look like they're hedged more than my MNCs. Now we're going to talk about how the four companies' stock price relates to the currency that they're most highly correlated with. So right here we have ADR stock price, and this graph over here is US dollars denominated in euros. And as the US dollar depreciates against the euro. You can see that Apollo stock price is declining too. So I'm going to say Apollo and the US are highly correlated, more so. This is Mondelez's stock price, and this is Japanese yen denominated in US dollars. These graphs look like they're doing the same thing. So as the Japanese yen depreciates and appreciates against the US dollar, looks like Mondelez is doing the same thing. And so these are highly correlated, Mondelez and the yen. This is BlackBerry's stock price, and this is the US dollar denominated in Canadian dollars. The US dollar actually depreciated against the Canadian dollar, and then it spiked up again during this last month. These two graphs are not correlated, so BlackBerry and the US are not very correlated. BlackBerry, again, is seeming to be hedged. This is Nintendo stock price, and this is the Japanese yen denominated in the US dollar, the same as I had before. So it doesn't look like these two graphs go together. Nintendo looks like they are hedged against their own currency in Japan. And even if you flip this graph around, Nintendo looks like they're hedged in the US too. So again, my two ADRs look like they're more hedged than my MNCs compared to these graphs. So my conclusion is Nintendo did by far the best out of the other three stocks, and I believe this is because that they were announcing new products during the last 4 months, and they're really getting their product out there and stepping it up. So new productivity is really helping Nintendo out.